Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Juma Mubarak. So excited to see you all, mashallah, on this beautiful sunny day after all the crazy snow we had. Inshallah, everyone was safe and no issues with the snow. Very excited about today's session. It should be fantastic. We have Iftikhar Hussain joining us to do the Khatara with part 9 of Living Islam with Purpose. And Alma will be discussing finding Sakeena in marriage during our community learning and dialogue program. Iftikhar, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can get started right away.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Allah reminds us, يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. People, be mindful of your Lord, who created you from a single soul, and from it created its mate, and from the pair of them spread countless men and women far and wide. Be mindful of Allah, in whose name you make requests of one another. Beware of severing the ties of kinship. Allah is always watching over you. And it reminds us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Believers, be mindful of Allah, speak in a direct fashion and to good purpose, and He will put your deeds right for you and forgive you your sins. Whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger will truly achieve a great triumph. So alhamdulillah, we have been doing this series of Living Islam with Purpose based on a seminal paper that Dr. Omar Farooq Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him and guide him to continue guiding the American Muslim community with his wisdom and his teachings, is based on a paper he wrote almost a decade and a half ago, coming close to 2 decades ago now. And we are talking about operational imperatives that the American Muslim community should and ought to embrace in order to better our situation as a community of believers in a nation that is in many ways multicultural, even though recent events have shown us how difficult that multicultural possibility is in many ways opposed by many in the community. And what has been revealed over this last election cycle and previous ones is how ingrained racism is, and the continued need to overcome the existence of this challenge within this community. And this is the American community that I'm talking about. So all of these ideas that we have been exploring in this series of khutab and khataras is around these operational imperatives. The one that we'll deal with today is titled Setting Priorities. So the Prophet ﷺ was reported to have told us that there was no prophet before me, but that it was a duty for him to guide his nation to what he knew was best for them and warn them about what he knew was worst for them. One of the interesting things about the way the Prophet described this is that if you think about what does a prophet know that is good or that is bad for his community, much of what is good and bad for a community that a prophet knows comes from revelation, right? Direct assignment of knowledge through Jibreel directly to the prophet that we are concerned with. In addition to revelatory knowledge, the knowledge that comes to a prophet of what is good and what is helpful and what is harmful and what is bad for a community comes from the prophet's own knowledge of the community, that is of the urf of the community, or the generally accepted practices of the community, the communal practices of the community. And when there are communal practices, as we have explored in past conversations, communal practices become known as good or become known as bad because they can be traced back to previous revelation. In fact, all that is good that we have in any given society and all that is bad in any given society can always be traced historically back to some or another or a set of teachings of previous prophets. This is, if you care to explore that, you will be able to find a trace back to one or more teachings of previous prophets. So this lines up with the worldview that the Quran promulgates and helps us adopt and promote, and that is that good is universally recognizable. Right? That good in a given society will translate into good in another society as well. There are some things that are good in one and not considered necessarily good, and rarely they might be necessarily bad in another society. But generally speaking, when we talk about ma'ruf in a society, it's ma'ruf in all societies. It's good in all societies. Or if we talk about munkar, that which is evil, it's evil in most societies, not just in one or two societies. So given this idea, then we can explore what our scholars talk about when they mention the idea of setting priorities. And how do we do that? Al-Izz ibn Abd as-Salam, a medieval scholar, he was a legal scholar, and like most of our medieval scholars, he was a polymath. He was an expert on so many different things. He summed up the idea of setting priorities with this opening statement, which is Jalb al-Masalih wa Dar al-Mafasid, to secure benefits and to ward off detriments. To secure benefits and to ward off detriments is essentially the entirety of what Islam teaches us, right? So this is not about salah or zakah or hajj or saum in terms of specific legal obligations we have to either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or to ourselves. It is to describe the nature of these obligations, right? All of these obligations, whether it is to Allah or to each other communally, is designed to jalb al-masalih, which is to secure benefits, or to ward off evil, to ward off harm, or to ward off detriments, dar al-mafasid. So maslaha and mafsada, these are the two operative words that we are looking at. And the translations we are using, they leave a bit to be desired, so we need to drill down into the Arabic words, maslaha and mafsada, or masalih and mafasid, the plural. So Umar Farq Abdullah tells us that focusing on benefits and detriments is part of the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? That we can understand that there are some things that are more important than other things, both in terms of the good it can bring or the harm that it can bring. So if one is more harmful than another thing, which one of those two things should we work on? The one that is more harmful. And this is about allocation of resources, which sounds like a very modern idea, right? Allocation of resources. We think this, oh, this is a corporate thing. Some of us on the call are going to say, yep, we know all about this. We do in some manner of speaking, but when we talk about allocation of resources in the prophetic framework, then there's a number of additional things that we need to acquire. First, we need to understand what are the end goals of prophetic setting of priorities. The end goal is not, as many of us know, working and living in the corporate world. In the corporate world, as an example, we optimize one thing. What is it? We optimize profits above every other consideration. Whereas in the prophetic model, we don't optimize profit. What do we optimize? There is one specific thing we optimize: the safety of our akhirah, as an individual and as a community. So when we set priorities, the primary objective we are optimizing is not profit, not worldly benefit, but the benefit of the akhirah. And the benefit of the akhirah then drives how you set priorities for the dunya, because it is the dunya where we set the priority for the akhirah. In terms of how we choose to do certain things and not do certain things, redirect resources from one thing to another thing. So this is an important first point to recognize that our scholars underscore. And the idea of optimizing profits, it's not a modern thing. You know, some of us might think that, oh, well, this is because of the modern world and the emphasis on profit above all else. This is not a modern thing. This is as old as shaitan is. This is as old as shaitan is, because shaitan's objective for us is to simply reduce and essentialize a very simple idea, optimize your akhirah, to another very simple idea, optimize your dunya. Right? So for shaitan, he simply wishes to replace that which is the most beneficial thing with which we can prioritize our lives with that which is the most harmful thing with which we can prioritize our lives. And that is prioritizing dunya over akhirah or akhirah over dunya. So this is an important point to recognize, because once you have the end goal clear, then prioritizing everything for your dunya becomes, because this is the arena of effort and the arena of engagement. If our end goal is clear, then our engagement process and the setting of priorities and and identifying what is good and what is beneficial and what is harmful and what is difficult becomes clearer, because our objectives are clear. Okay, so taking a slight deeper dive into masalih, benefits. We are using the term benefits. However, benefits, sometimes if you think of the English world, it might bring to mind non-essential and essential benefits, right? Because benefits sounds like, you know, what's good for me. Maslaha or masalih in the Arabic linguistic sense, it's what's essentially beneficial, not what is incidentally beneficial, not what is nice to have, but what is necessary to have, right? So when we talk about maslaha, we need to understand that the Arabic word maslaha is about wholeness, it's about healthiness, it's about well-being. And it is all about essential and useful things that we have to keep in mind. Under the essential and useful and essential and necessary things are all the things that support the necessary and useful things, or necessary essential things. This is maslaha, all the good. And mafsada, likewise, you know, when you think of the word good, what's the opposite word that comes to mind? It's evil. When you think of maslaha, what's the opposite word that should come to mind in the Arabic? It's mafsada or mafasid. Masalih and mafasid. Beneficial, essentially and necessarily beneficial things versus essentially and necessarily harmful things that we need to identify within the context of where we live and how we live, and then take guard against those things. So mafasid are things that will harm us, damage us, and they include the lesser things of disadvantages and inconveniences. But there is a notion of a priority that comes when we think about masalih, good things, and mafasid, harmful things. So this is the approach that scholars have devised and actually have literally invented a whole sacred science called the discipline of ilm al-mawazana. Mawazin comes from mizan or scale, and the idea is that this is the knowledge of how you balance the requirements and the needs of warding off the harms while accruing the benefits, the useful and necessary benefits. And with regard to this, a couple of scholars that were experts at this from our medieval set of scholars are Imam al-Shatibi and Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, who is often thought of in our modern educated circles of Muslims as this hardcore Salafi. But Imam Taymiyyah, Ibn Taymiyyah, was a very complex scholar who clearly has been hijacked by Salafis and Wahhabis in our modern context to be their imam. He was far more complex and multifaceted and a scholar than the tradition shows him to be in those circles. So just wanted to point that out in case Ibn Taymiyyah creates a negative reaction for some of us. Imam Shatibi, of course, is called the father of the maqasid method, even though there were many others before him who talked about the approach to usul in our tradition that bases it on purposes. But Shatibi is traditionally assigned that sort of credit. So we're going to explore again very briefly today and follow it up with another session next time on the same topic. What are the ways of looking at benefits and harms within the Muslim tradition? What is the first thing that's taught in this sacred science of ilm al-mawazana, the science of counterbalancing mawazana? So the scholars will teach us al-maqasid al-khamsa, the 5 major objectives of Islamic law, right? And they're called al-maqasid al-khamsa al-kubra. When we look at maqasid or purposes, there's again another whole sacred science of maqasid identification within a given context that is based on these 5, and then further delineation under these 5. So what are these 5? And this is what we'll cover today, inshallah. The first is the maqsad, or the purpose of preserving our religion. This is identified as in some lists of these 5 as the first one, and in others as the second one. We'll use this as the first one. And the preservation of religion very obviously is about preserving and maintaining a sound understanding of our tradition. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us? What did the Prophet teach us? Allah's words are the Quran, and the Prophet's guidance, his sunnah. The Quran describes itself as containing itself refers to as al-kitab that produces hikmah. And a lot of scholars will take this and say the kitab is the Quran, and the Quran itself is guidance. But what is this hikmah? And the hikmah, for many scholars, is the instantiated example of the Prophet's understanding of the Quran, right? So we call it the Sunnah, and we call it, the Quran refers to in our interpretive tradition as the hikmah that the Prophet displayed when he understood the Quran as revealed by Allah and then acted upon it. So these two things, understanding the Quran and understanding how the Quran is to be lived in the real world by the prophetic example, this is the preservation of religion. Now, the details of it, obviously, our scholarly class developed these sacred sciences, and the acquisition and understanding of these sacred sciences for a class of the community, the scholars, is a necessary requirement, right? This is part of the setting of priorities. It's very important because it's through our scholarly class, going back all the way in this connective tradition back to the Prophet ﷺ, is necessary for us to safeguard our religion. The second, preservation of the nafs, right? Preservation of the nafs. And here, nafs can equal literally your life, right? The well-being of your physical body, your spiritual needs. So that is the deen, the preservation of religion. Then the next one is the preservation of life or the self. Sometimes it's said as nafs, at other times it's said as al-haya, or life. And this is very simply, we have to protect human life from sicknesses, violence, starvation, and everything else that threatens the safety and security of human beings, right? If you reduce this second maqsad to the safety and the security of human beings, then that is a sufficient and necessary definition. So everything that promotes and protects the safety and security and continued life of human beings is what this objective and this maqsad entails and covers. The third one is the preservation of aql, or reason, because without reason, one cannot acquire a sound understanding of the religion. Without reason, one cannot set priorities. So the harms that a lack of reason or aql entails is ignorance, insanity, all kinds of addictions that prevent our aql, our rational capacity from functioning appropriately and properly. So we need to preserve our aql, our ability to reason in a sound and proper manner. And that itself is obviously a very important objective. So we have now covered three: the protection of religion, of our deen, the protection of our literally our bodies or of our nafs, the protection of our aql, the ability to the ability to reason consistently and continuously. The fourth is preservation of progeny, of children, and this includes both those who are our ancestors or our elders and our children and ourselves, right? So what this does is it takes the first three are the nexus of the first three objectives is the individual person, right? An individual person must safeguard his or her religion, his or her physical body and self, and his or her ability to reason. But the fourth one, this preservation of nasl, your progeny, is for continuity of community. We need to make sure that we are doing everything that is necessary and sufficient in the appropriate levels of priority, so that future generations can continue to be either at least as good as us or better than us, right? And obviously the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in communities is that there is an up and down in communal capacity and communal success, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala graces a community, that community becomes well established. Its rituals, its functions, its institutions are well established, produce good outcomes, and renew generation after generation. This is part of what is possible because the next generation and the future generations are preserved, and we have institutions to preserve them. So both institutional preservation as well as the benefit that it accrues to future generations are tied together, obviously. So this fourth one is about continuity of community. And then there's another piece that again entails, that is tied to the fourth one, and that is preservation of mal, or wealth, or the capacity. And this is a dunyawi thing. This is something related to our dunya. We operate in a physical world. We operate with wealth. Wealth fundamentally should be understood to be a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Everything that we own today, no matter whether we are, primary producers of goods, secondary or tertiary producers of goods. Those of you who are computer programmers and marketeers, you are tertiary producers of goods in our society. Those of us who are farmers, we directly produce things that are absolutely necessary. So there are levels of production that all of us understand. It's basics of how communities are set up. But all of that is grounded in basic wealth. And wealth is to be understood as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Everything that we have comes out of the earth that we occupy, right? To have food and water, this is directly coming out of the earth, right? Our manipulation and engagement with soil, with air, with water, with the sun. all of this is environmental, and all of the wealth of the world is within the environment that we then mine, use, and produce further in additional works. There is another piece of wealth that Allah has given that is not environmental, that is individual, and that is our time. Now, recognize that time is a gift from Allah, and the environment is a gift from Allah. We are simply stewards of it, right? And of course, all of us are familiar with wal asr innal insana lafi khusr, and Allah is saying in that, just as a brief thought to observe, that time that Allah has given is a shrinking commodity. That's why it is innal insana lafi khusr. What is man in a loss of? He or she is in a loss of losing the allocated amount of time that Allah has given us. That is written for us on the before our birth, right? How much time we have, and obviously we know the tradition that allows us to do things that might result in Allah increasing our time on earth, through charity and other good works. This is one way of increasing our time on earth. Obviously, we don't know what our time on earth is. So time that is given to individuals and wealth in our environment are combined, and we need to preserve and make sure that our behaviors preserve wealth, both for our communal consumption and the consumption of our future generations. So in summary, we have these 5 things that the Maqasid framework says we need to preserve. And we begin with preservation, right? Not optimization. This is not about optimizing, it's about first preserving things at a certain level of functionality so that this becomes, this produces the necessary and sufficient types of outcomes that promote the well-being and security, or against what objective? Against the objective of success in the akhirah. So preservation of our religion, very obvious. We need to understand our religion in a functionally literate way, and in a communally equivalent way. It can't be that one person has a far superior understanding that prevents others from working with her, or another person has such a poor understanding that he is functionally unable to interact with the community. So we need a certain level of understanding in the community. This is a very hard objective, and that's why our societies in the past emphasized so much the community of scholars, supported them, provided them with the necessary income so that they could focus and continue to produce the wealth of understanding of this deen to preserve it. So preservation of religion, preservation of our bodies, our physical selves, our nafs, the preservation of aql, our ability to reason. That's why obviously Allah prohibits alcohol, the consumption of alcohol, or the consumption of other harmful things that would create detriment to our ability to think. And then the 4th and the 5th that are tied together, the preservation of nasl, or our progeny, and the preservation of mal, or our wealth. So these are the 5 that this particular science teaches to prioritize. Inshallah, next time we will explore what is the mechanism of this prioritization. So these are five different areas. One is not more important than the other. However, when you talk about limited resources, what at any given point in time must be emphasized over another? This is the ilm al-muwazana. So we'll look at the actual mechanisms of how we do this with regard to these five objectives, inshallah, the next time. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب عباد الله إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Jazakallah khair, Brother Iftikhar. That was fantastic. Sister Sophia made a comment. She said, Jazakallah khair, a very helpful way to stay focused on our choices, the insidious items and choices and big choices. For those that are watching through Facebook, if you have questions or comments in regards to our speakers' presentations, please post them and I will repeat them here for their benefit. So Sister Abab, I'm going to turn things over to you. We're going to ask you to unmute, inshallah.
Sorry. Yes.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me share my screen with you. Okay. Can you see it?
We can. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll be talking today about finding Sakeena in your marriage. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure seeing everyone today. It's been a while since we got to see. I'm trying to record here. I forgot to hit the. So we're going to talk today about finding Sakeena in your marriage. And I will start with the dua. Anything I say in Arabic, I will follow it in English translation immediately, inshallah. So إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we bear witness that there no one has the right to be worshipped and obeyed unconditionally except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we ask him to send out peace and blessings to our messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, peace be upon him, his family and companions, and the people who follow him to the day of judgment. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask us among them. Ameen. اللهم اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So we'll talk today about the Sakeena in your marriage, in our marriages. Sakeena meaning tranquility and peace. And okay, so it's not flipping. I don't know why it's not moving. Okay, so let me choose this one. Okay. So the agenda here today is we're going to talk about common marital problems, common ways spouses handle their frustrations, and ways to manage marital problems. So common marital problems, I see my clients at my practice a lot talking about finances. So you might have one spouse who likes to save, the other likes to spend. So this problem will impact the marriage, whether these conflicts are positive or negative, then they will impact the marriage. Second, and this is huge, children and parenting differences. So you have child, first when we got married, do we have same values? If both parties have different values, then this will cause a lot of issues in the marriage. And we see it every day in counseling sessions. Parenting differences. Maybe one parent is more geared towards maybe religious teaching, the other one is not so much, and that can create rift in the marriage. One is maybe strict, the other one is more lenient. Parents sometimes fight in front of their children about the issue related to the children, and that will create huge issues and developmental issues for the children. Another one is fighting and communication style differences. So if we talk about sometimes your family, if you look at your family and see how conflicts were managed in your family of origin, did the family members or your family of origin, did they talk about problems or they did not? Some people or some families will like talk and maybe discuss and maybe yell and scream. Maybe another family will just not discuss, not communicate, not talk about issues, and everything is actually shoved under the rug. So if you have one person from this family marries another, someone from that family, then they're gonna have issue in the marriage in the way of communicating, whether talking about the problems or not talking about the problems. Different love languages. So we know that there are 5 love languages: the quality time, word of affirmations, gifts, act of service, and oh, I forgot the fifth one. Touch, the touch. So we want to love our spouse or our partner according to their love language, not according to ours. So if my spouse likes to be touched and I repeatedly give them gifts, they will not feel loved. So sometimes we mix between our own love language. For instance, I like maybe words of affirmation. So I like to hear from him word of affirmations. But if his language is touch, I cannot just give him word of affirmation, like my language of love. I have to give him what he interprets as love. Another issue in marriages that we see a lot, specifically in our community, in-laws. And in-laws is a huge issue when it comes to how to balance between your marriage and your relationship with your family of origin. As Muslims, we are encouraged and actually advised strongly to take care of our parents. However, how we draw the line between taking care of our parents and also taking care of our spouse, and we see that a lot in our communities in terms of continuous conflict between the in-laws and the son-in-law or the daughter-in-law, and that can cause actually sometimes divorce. So this is any of this stuff, like the finances, raising the children, the fighting, the love language, all of them, if they are not managed properly, they can create a lot of problems in your marriage. Intimacy, in terms of the way you like to be loved, the frequency, the time. And I know in our Muslim community, sometimes we shy away from talking about these issues, but I think it's important to talk about it because it does affect our relationship with our spouse, how we interact. And actually, in Islam, we are married, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it's for mawadda and Sakeena and rahma. So it is important to also talk about the intimacy part and to be open about it with our spouse. So let's see here. So we want to remember something, that when we talk about frustration, a lot of men get angry and frustrated, and a lot of men get worried and get sad. It doesn't mean that men don't get sad or women don't get angry, but we're talking about, in the general sense and the research. Women like to talk about it. So if I have an issue, I would like to talk about it to my best friend. I would like to talk about it to my therapist. I would like to talk about it to my sister. Men usually get frustrated and don't like to talk about it. And if you ask them to talk about it, they might get frustrated. So as we said, women like to seek support. Men sometimes get frustrated seeking support or giving support, and that will create issues for the woman. So we just want to keep these points in mind. So men and women express their emotions differently. So when we talk about, for instance, men usually like to express their emotions by expressing anger. And when we have anger issues, usually there are underlying emotions underneath this anger. Maybe they are depressed, maybe they feel lonely, disappointed, let down. So there is always something underneath that anger. It's easier for men to get angry, and this is more common with men than women. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist with women, but it's more common with men. And when a man has a problem in his marriage, they get really overwhelmed. They get more overwhelmed, the research said, than women. When they are mad, their heart rate will increase, and sometimes the adrenaline and the cortisol will be high, and sometimes their hearing and their peripheral vision will be lower, will be impaired. Sometimes some studies show that when men were so angry, they might have a lower IQ while they are angry. So this is something to put in mind. So we want to understand anger and what's behind it, why it's happening. and we want to explore it. We want to pause. For women, they want to refrain from matching the anger. So if your man is angry, you might not want to be as angry as him. And I think if one spouse is angry, if the woman is angry, maybe the man needs to really slow it down a bit, and vice versa. So we kind of like de-escalate. Women usually, when they are angry, they retain their angst. They second guess themselves, and that's an issue common with men. Research shows more than in men. So we want to talk about the impact of marital conflicts. So it affects definitely your health. So if you have an issue with your spouse, you might not sleep that night. You might have anxiety, depression, diabetes, heart disease. A lot of our physical symptoms and diseases are a reflection of our emotional state. When we have a conflict that is not addressed, it will be unhealthy, and it will affect our health, and it will affect our relationship and the people around us. As I mentioned, it will we will have mental health issues sometimes because of that. It will affect children. So definitely the impact of children can be severe sometimes. So when we talk about a relationship and conflict between a husband and wife, they actually, it's on the continuum between hostile silence to physical violence. And we are talking about here conflicts. If there is an abuse in any relationship, that needs to be addressed separately. So we are not actually talking about accepting any abuse, physical or any type of abuse. We're talking about conflicts without physical or any type of abuse. So when we talk about so Gottman talked about the let me talk about Gottman a little bit. So he did this love lab, and he interviewed like thousands of couples. And actually he came to a point when he can predict if a couple will get a divorce or not. And actually, you see that, I see that in myself and in my practice and my colleagues. To a great extent, you can predict that this can be solvable or not from the way people are communicating and fighting. So there are signs that predicts the divorce. So the first one, according to Gottman, and I use that a lot in my practice because I like it. I feel it's like structured and it speaks to me. I use that with my clients. I use this Gottman method even in my marriage. I think it's very helpful. And there is a book that anyone can get, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. It's important, I believe, for people to read it together and go over the exercises and just go over it and see what tips you can get from it in order to handle your emotions and your emotional reactivities within the marriage. We want to remember that we cannot change someone else. We can only change ourselves. So we cannot get into a marriage thinking that, oh, I'm going to change him or I'm going to change her. This is not going to happen. We can only change ourselves. And when we change the input, the output will be different. If we keep repeating the same input, we're going to get the same output. And you can apply that on anything in life. So the first sign that predicts divorce is the harsh startup. Like starting the conflict was like attacking and criticizing and the using of you instead of I. The second sign is the 4 horsemen. So therefore the criticism, the contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. So when you talk about criticism, of course, no relationship is perfect. So we do have issues, and I mean, we do have sometimes stuff that we are not pleased with our spouse. That's normal. But are we criticizing the person or are we criticizing the action? So, okay, I can criticize, for instance, you maybe slam the door. I don't like this. But if I tell him you're always angry and you're always doing this, like criticizing his character, that's a different story. Contempt, when we are talking to each other within a marriage with disrespect and a sense of superiority, like this sarcasm and putting the other person down. That's a predicts divorce. Defensiveness. So the minute someone or your spouse points out that they are displeased with something, instead of looking for a solution and working with them with what do they like and what is it, exploring, coming from a place of curiosity, we start to be defensive, and that actually very damaging and deadly to a relationship. The fourth one is stonewalling, when people are not talking to each other, and this is actually considered emotional reactivity. You know, when we are just not talking, not responding, and this can be extremely damaging when you have the children around and spouses are not talking to each other. So the third sign of that predicts divorce, flooding. When we talk about flooding, it's emotional activation. So people are angry, mad. How do they self-regulate? Do they know how to self-regulate or not? Do they just fly off the handle and they just get angry and say whatever comes into their mind, and that can be very damaging. The fourth sign is body language. So no matter how much my words are nice, if my facial expression is not really depicting what I'm saying, if my body language is showing rejection, the other person will not receive my message. 70% of our communication actually relies upon the body language, not our words. The fifth sign is the failed repair attempts. So sometimes, for instance, and this happens a lot, and I see it a lot in my practice, like for instance, couple are bickering and fighting over something, and one of them will infuse some sense of humor, or maybe will try to be nicer about it. The other person does not pick up that repair attempt and escalates. So failed repair attempts repeatedly, then the person who's trying to be nice and make a humor out of it and make it softer, then he or she will give up. It will be like it's just useless effort for them eventually. The sixth sign is bad memories, and this is also a big one. When we talk about when there are bad memories, for instance, a lot of people have bad memories around their wedding. We had a lot of drama. His father did this and her mother did that, and all of these stories, and they keep talking about it. And this is just an example. There are a lot of bad memories. Okay, when I was giving birth, this happened. So there are all of these stories. If we have a good marriage, we will be able to switch these bad memories to normalize them and neutralize them. If we have a good marriage, if we are able to talk about it and get a closure, if we can, get a sincere apology or maybe forgiveness. But provided that we are having a good marriage at the moment. So the next point, I know I have until like 2:15 or maybe 2:10, so I'm going to try to hurry up. So how we can connect with our spouse. So I have listed a couple of things here. We want to enhance our love map. We want to be curious about our partner. So I want to know my husband when he gets sad, when he gets angry, or when he is affectionate. I want to know how did his family or my family really dealt with this. And then we can talk about it, or maybe we can take a note of it and adjust accordingly. So we are coming from a place of curiosity instead of place of challenge or defensiveness. Second one, we want to show our admiration. I think there is one of the exercises I give my clients are try to give your husband or your wife 5 compliments and 5 positive things a week, regardless if he or she started or initiated or not. This is your own assignment to give them 5 compliments or do 5 positive things to them, and see how this will affect the relationship. Try to do things together. You pray together, eat together if you can, go to bed together, do stuff together. So that creates bonds. Turn towards each other. And that's also important. For instance, and I think a lot of people, myself included, are guilty of this. When someone tells me, or even my husband tells me a problem, and I jump to give an advice, or oh, how about this, how about that? And then the other person feel like aggravated. And I'm just trying to help. But people don't want advices. People want someone to listen. And sometimes we forget that. And we need to remind ourselves of that. The other thing is, for instance, this attitude of we against others. So for instance, if my husband comes and telling me about a problem at work, for instance, and I said, oh, but you do that, and so I'm as I am siding with the other party. We wanna talk to each other as we are against the world. You wanna validate, you wanna acknowledge, you wanna tell them that you are there with them. And the one thing also, the attitude that is extremely important, that when you are in pain, the world stops and I listen. Do we do that? Not a lot of us do that. And sometimes we forget, of course, myself included. Like when your spouse is in pain, I just drop everything and I sit and listen, not to give advice, just to give my presence. Unconditional love. Do we do that? And if you try to do that, imagine the impact of this on the relationship. The other one is let your partner influence you. So you come from a place of, okay, if he has something or she has something good to influence me, I will use it. Like for instance, and I will talk about myself because I don't want to talk about my clients. So when I got married, my husband likes to pray Aisha earlier and I like to pray it late. And then eventually I started to pray it earlier. And then that actually created some like, oh, I influenced you. So maybe before learning about Gottman, oh no, you did not influence me. I wanted to do that. But if he comes and tells me I influenced you, or you are doing what I always said that we should do, and say and validate it, that will give some closeness and bonding. Solve your solvable problems. So that will take us to the other slide. So there are two kinds of problems. One is perpetual problems, and the second is solvable problems. Perpetual problems, like something you fight about since you got married. Like he puts the toilet seat up and he forgets to put it down, and you get mad. Okay, this is like something repeatedly. That just happens all the time. Solvable problem is like we fight over going to a restaurant. Now we are in COVID, but before COVID. Okay, I want to go to this restaurant. He wants to go to this restaurant. We fight over that. So once we go to his favorite restaurant, and I go to my favorite restaurant together, then the problem is solved. We both, achieve what we want. We went to the place that we like. However, perpetual problems, not because we have perpetual problem, that means we cannot have a good marriage when we cannot thrive. We can actually thrive. It's the way we approach these issues. So I have listed a couple of things here. We want to start softer. So I talk to my clients, and sometimes I use it myself. We want to talk about an observation, a feeling, a need, and a request. So I am observing that you turn the light on in the morning, and that makes me feel agitated, and I need some, darkness in the morning or dark room because that hurts my eyes. Can you please? So then I'm not telling you, I'm not fighting with him. I'm not telling him, you always turn this light on. Don't you understand? Imagine if I start like that. This is harsh start. But if I start with me saying that, this hurt my eyes, how about we do this? That's a different start and a different end to the argument, if there is any, with the second one. Learn how to use repair attempts, de-escalate. So if you see your partner is trying to be humorous and try to make it soft, go with it. Or maybe you initiate that. We don't have to discuss things by fighting. And we don't want to give that example to our children. Monitor your physiology. So if I'm getting really upset, I need to be aware that I am getting upset. And then I will excuse myself. Okay, let me go. I'm going to go for half an hour and then I will come back, we'll discuss. So we don't want to also go just disappear and don't say that I want to come back and talk. Can we take 15 minutes break and we come back and talk, or maybe tomorrow? So both people they know they're going to talk about it, but not now because they are getting flooded and activated. Learn how to compromise. So you want to give and take. People are getting married, and I know it's 2:11. I need to wrap up. So learn how to compromise in terms of you are two independent people, adults coming to live together. You will have your way, she will have, or he will have your way. So we need to come to a compromise on middle ground. And we want to be tolerant of each other's imperfections. No one is perfect. So we need to be aware of that and make a conscious decision. So what we covered common marital problems, common ways to spouses handle their frustration, and ways to manage marital problems. And thank you for having me. And if you need to contact me, this is my information. So let's stop sharing now, Nicole?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you. Yeah, mashallah, jazakallah khair. This is such a big topic. I'm sure Sister Takia will ask you to come back to do a series of talks with us. I know how she thinks, mashallah. So this is big, mashallah. There's so many points that we can take, not only in dealing with a partner who's a spouse, but with others, and how to communicate with others in general. So, mashallah, jazakallah khair for your time and wisdom, mashallah. This was excellent. Thank you. So just a quick announcement. Sister Tia, did you have anything you needed to say to the group before I give just a quick announcement?
Just to clarify that, thank you, Salam alaikum everybody, that Rabab unfortunately won't be able to join us this evening for our conversation, but you did say, Rabab, that people can email you with questions or contact you directly if they want.
Yeah, they can email me, and my email is on my website, rababalma.com. They can email me, definitely.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Excellent. So maybe we can get Sister Rabab back again and then have her as part of these Illuminating Conversation program. So please note that a flyer was sent out last night in regards to the Illuminating Conversations program with an incorrect link. There has been a new email sent out with a correct link. Also, all of our programs with their links are on our website, mainlinemuslimsociety.org. So please check us out on the web. We have a calendar of events that lists all of our activities, which is growing, mashallah. If you're interested in volunteering, please contact us. We have lots to do and lots of programs that we're looking forward to doing. So we would love your hands involved. So please, if you can, give us your time, your talent. And if you can't do either, we'll take your treasure. So there is a donate button on our website that will help sustain us and continue to be able to produce the programs that we're doing. We love feedback, so please email us your feedback. I'm so excited to see some dear friends from back in the day joining us today. So mashallah, welcome, Sister Hamdiya, Sister Saida. Love that. Brother Nishad, I see that you're back. We've missed you for the last couple of weeks, so I'm glad that you're here, mashallah. Sister Sophia, always a good supporter. Sister Maha, Sister Hiba. Sakeena, thank you for joining us again. This is great to see you. Sister Maryam, Nejmi, we love seeing all these people here with us on the Friday Khataras. Thank you for coming. I'd like to make a closing dua. I know we're running a little long today. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us. May He increase our sabr, our patience with one another. May we apply the lessons we've learned today about protecting ourselves and guarding our iman, our wealth, our children, our bodies, and our health, and learning to use that protection towards our partners, towards our family and friends. May we all stay safe from COVID, which continues to flourish, unfortunately. May we all remain healthy and happy, and may we see one another again on the following Jummah, inshallah. Ameen. Jazakallah khair, everyone. Inshallah, we hope to see you again next week. Always good to see you all. We have a few comments. Happy to share with you today, Sister Hamdia. We're so glad you're here. Sister Sakeena, Jazakallah khair for very important and informative presentations. What a wide and useful range of topics. Sister Sophia, Amin, Jazakallah khair. We should have these wonderful coach talks like this often. Brother Nished, Amin, Jazakallah khair, and Maryam, thank you all. Great talks. We love having you all. Thank you. Keep joining us, and we'll see you next Friday, inshallah. Juma Mubarak.